Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is all about finding profound wisdom, not in certainty, but in the subtle power of contradiction.
That's a great way to put it.
We're taking a deep dive into this idea that life doesn't always need these neat, defined answers, and that maybe the blurry middle ground is actually where the real insight is.
It is, and the sources you shared with us focus on a dialogue with the author Prashanthi about her book Embracing Paradox. It's a really fascinating look at the Tao Te Ching.
The ancient wisdom, right,
Mm.
but how it applies to the absolute chaos of modern life.
Exactly.
And if you're the one who shared these sources, you're looking for that quick, deep understanding, but the topic itself is just, it's inherently slippery.
That's the whole point, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
How do you deeply understand something that is literally defined by its refusal to be defined? So our goal is to give you a kind of roadmap for that shift in thinking.
The shift away from being the seeker.
Right, away from that exhausting role of always seeking definitions and moving you more into the grounded, observant position of being the witness.
And you know, this provides such a critical lens for navigating the sheer information overload we all face.
Every single day.
If your mind is constantly seeking labels and certainties, trying to fit this infinite universe into a finite little box, you're just going to be overwhelmed instantly.
Of course.
Prashanthi suggests the opposite. She says the most valuable knowledge is found not in pinning down the divine or the Tao or consciousness, but in just accepting its inherent contradictions.
And what's so striking is that her path didn't start with some big philosophical search. It started with a crisis.
Yes.
She came to Taoism during what she called a really terrible crossroads, a period of severe downtime.
And that personal context is just, it's absolutely crucial. It grounds the whole philosophy in reality.
Totally.
She basically argues that we shouldn't resist those low periods. In fact, she says great things happen at those crossroads, that amazing things often only blossom during that downtime.
The shedding of skin.
Exactly. You need the low points. It's the foundation for understanding balance. You can't always be high on life. And resisting that downswing, well, that just prolongs the suffering.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey. How did she get to these, pretty radical insights? She grew up in India, right?
Right. In a spiritual environment that was predominantly Hindu, but also, and this is key, it really encouraged an acceptance of all religions.
That's interesting.
Yeah, her family followed the Guru Sri Satya Sai Baba, whose symbol actually embraced multiple faiths. You know, Christianity, Islam, others. It was all about demonstrating that there's just one underlying source, no matter the figurehead.
So that set the stage for seeing unity, even in what looks like difference.
Precisely. But even then, she had this core spiritual tension that kind of pushed her toward Taoism. She really questioned the idea of humanizing God.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she wondered why the divine needed to look like us or, suffer from the same human ailments we do. She felt that putting a specific face or definition on the infinite was actually limiting.
And maybe even problematic.
Exactly. That internal friction, that resistance to fitting the infinite into a human-shaped mold is what aligns her so perfectly with the Tao Te Ching.
So she starts this project. She originally just intended to translate the 81 verses.
A very modest goal.
A simple translation project that clearly snowballed into something much bigger.
It demanded more. I mean, reading different versions, engaging with thinkers like Alan Watts, it just pulled her deeper into the paradoxes you find in literally every single verse.
And that required a kind of deep internal work. She called it shadow work.
Right, or the unfolding of lotus petals.
Okay, those are terms that sound profound, but they can feel a bit vague. If you're looking for that quick but thorough understanding, what does that internal wrestling actually look like?
Well, shadow work, it's a term from Jungian psychology, and it's really the act of confronting and integrating the parts of yourself and the world that you normally reject or label as bad.
The stuff you hide.
The stuff you hide. And the unfolding of lotus petals is just a beautiful analogy for that slow, sometimes painful process of purification. You can't just intellectually decide that good and bad coexist.
You have to feel it.
You have to feel that tension in your own life and choose not to flinch away from it.
So she had to confront her own inner conflicts just to write the book, because the book itself is built on this ultimate contradiction.
Which is the very first lesson of the Tao Te Ching.
The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao.
You got it. If you can define it, you've already missed it. That is a foundational paradox.
And what stands out to me here and why this is so valuable for you, if you're listening, is that the ultimate relief comes from ending the search itself.
Yeah.
Prashanthi talks about finding this profound peace unjust, not knowing what the Tao is. It's moving from seeking a definition to just saying, I'm okay with the great mystery.
Accepting uncertainty is the answer to the search, and this leads right to the practice of non-labeling. Her advice is incredibly direct about this.
She says you have to pull those labels out, just take it out and chuck them.
Yes, and just think about how much mental energy we spend doing that.
All day long in our jobs, our relationships.
Yeah.
Classifying everything as good or bad, right or wrong.
But the paradox demands that duality. You cannot have good without bad. She stresses that you need the bad just as much as you need the good.
So sitting with those contradictions, understanding that opposing forces have to exist together, that's the transformative act.
That's what allows the lotus to unfold.
She uses a really powerful analogy to illustrate this, to show how the universe operates beyond our human moral labels.
The one about the rain.
Yes. When it pours, the Tao doesn't differentiate between a saint and a murderer. The same rain falls on both.
And this is a profoundly radical idea, especially when you compare it to a lot of Western moral systems where, cosmic justice is central.
For sure.
The Tao doesn't judge. The cosmic flow just is. It operates outside of our ego-driven concepts of right and wrong and just sustains everything equally.
So to connect this back to you, the person listening, if the fundamental energy of the universe doesn't differentiate, why do we hold onto our labels so fiercely?
Right.
The goal she's pointing to is to move past that need to classify. The instruction is simply to be authentic to yourself in the moment. Just do it.
That's the theory. But here's where it gets really, really challenging.
When you introduce other people.
Exactly. That's when the philosophy of surrender bumps up against responsibility.
Which is the huge practical challenge.
Yeah.
How do you apply this kind of surrender to daily life? She uses that parenting example.
Yes, reconciling surrender, which her guru advised, with the practical need to tell her daughter, stop looking at your phone at the dinner table.
Right, because if she just surrenders completely to the flow, she's worried about external judgment.
She's worried about being labeled a bad parent. Or worse, failing her child. That tension comes from society's predetermined idea of what a good parent looks like.
So non-action feels terrifyingly irresponsible. How does she reconcile that?
She realized the tension comes from that fear of judgment. The paradox requires you to accept the potential consequences of letting go of your need for control, even if it leads to backlash.
But how do you actually do that? How do you act when the results are so out of your hands? It sounds like a recipe for just being paralyzed.
This is where she beautifully integrates the concept of karma yoga.
Okay, the yoga of action. What does that specifically prescribe here?
It prescribes selfless action. You perform the action. You do what you think is right, like asking your daughter to put the phone away, but you do it without attachment to the outcome. She says it so well. You don't worry about the whistles.
The whistles being the feedback, the results, the backlash, the praise.
All of it. Worrying about the whistles is what ties the action to your ego. If you get praise, you feel good. If you get criticism, you feel bad. With karma yoga, you act because the action is required, not to get a specific result.
So the practical takeaway for you, trying to integrate this, is simply being your authentic self in the moment. Do the thing, but drop the anxiety about what comes next.
And this leads perfectly into how this kind of spirituality can't be a separate activity you do on a weekend. It has to be interwoven into every part of your life.
The author, Prashanthi, is a project manager. She sees her corporate work as a spiritual endeavor.
Right, showing up as her best self and, crucially, seeing the divine, the Tao, in her colleagues, regardless of how broken the system might seem.
And to do that, she talks about this critical and really counterintuitive boundary.
Isolation and minding your own business, which sounds selfish, but it's not.
No, it's about fiercely protecting your own energy. She says when we get caught up in the web of stuff, other people's drama, their grievances, it adds what she calls density.
And that density is just internal noise. It's mental clutter. When your head is full of other people's stories, you can't hear your own authentic voice. The path of surrender gets so much harder.
So isolation, in this sense, isn't about escape. It's about refinement. It helps with the shadow work because you're not constantly being distracted by external noise telling you how you should feel.
And this all leads to the defining shift. For you, trying to find deeper meaning, the seeker has to stop frantically searching for answers. You have to stop seeking.
And instead, be the witness.
Just be the witness to the happenings of life.
Okay, what does that look like? A seeker feels anxiety and immediately tries to find the cause, the cure, the solution. What does a witness do?
A witness just watches. They observe the anxiety as energy, as an event, without immediately slapping a label of bad on it or needing it to stop. They're just present with it.
So it's the difference between being pulled into the drama versus watching the scene unfold from a non-reactive distance.
And the final stage, she says, is when even the witness drops away and there is nothing to see. Just presence.
So this deep dive really brings us full circle, back to acceptance and surrender, going with the flow, which she says is the only proven way out.
And what's so fascinating and really essential for you to grasp is the historical context here. Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching not for monks in a monastery.
But for administrators and kings, people trying to govern a complex, messy world.
It shows the universality of the message. It's not just for artists or spiritual leaders. The author herself identifies as an average next-door girl.
You don't have to quit your job and move to a mountain.
No. The challenge is how to apply this philosophy when the bills are due or your job seems broken. And the answer is to show up authentically. Use karma yoga to detach from the outcome and protect your inner space.
That focus on transformation, it's echoed in a cultural insight she shared. She mentioned her excitement that the future is the year of the fire horse, which is a big contrast to the past year of the snake.
Which required all those layers of shedding.
It's an ancient way of reminding us that these transformative processes, even the low points, are always necessary.
So what does this all mean for us right now? We're fundamentally taught that achieving the uptime, the success, the happiness, that's the goal of life. We chase the high.
And we spend all our energy trying to eliminate the low.
But if the lowest points, the downtime, are actually much needed for the goodness to exist because of that fundamental yin and yang balance.
Well, that raises a really important final question for you to explore.
Go on.
What if the biggest struggle you're facing right now is simply accepting the necessity of this current hardship? That awareness alone, that the low point serves a purpose, that might be the biggest thing you need to worry about embracing.